Hello, everyone. So, welcome to this introduction to Python course. I hope that I am audible and that my am I audible to everyone? Yes, perfect. And I also hope that we are live. All right. So, let me give you a brief introduction of what this particular stream is going to be about. So, as you know, Scalar.com is an online techversity, and we upskill engineers across the world, right? Especially for computer science department. So, since the past few weeks, we have started this community effort in which we take what we teach in our classrooms and we teach it online to a wider audience, so that others can also benefit from whatever teachings we have in our classes. So we had a DS Algo series earlier, and now we are beginning with an introduction to Python series. This series is kind of aimed towards people who are very new to programming, right? So people who know absolutely nothing about Python. So we are going to start from the very basics, and the aim of this series is to basically introduce you to Python, and towards the end of it, we should be able to build a very simple to-do application in Django and actually deploy it, right? So that you actually have a website that you can visit and see your website running. Right? That is the aim of this video series. So I hope that you are excited as I am. Perfect. Yes, the videos will be available after the class. So I assume that you're watching on YouTube. So this is a YouTube live session. Once the lecture is over, once the session is over, this video will be available at the Scalar YouTube channel. Right. So the channel that you're currently watching on, it will be in the video archives over there. All right. So I will just give you a brief thing over here. So if you go to github.com, right, /Scalar Academy /intro to Python. So this is the URL. I will paste the URL over here in the chat, and you will also be able to find the URL in the video description, right? So I'm pasting the URL over here in the chat. You will also be able to find it in the video description. If you go to this URL, you will be able to find all the lecture notes and all the material for this lecture, right? And for the subsequent lectures of this class. So currently this repository is kind of empty. I only have a readme file and a lecture1.md, which I will be using for the first lecture. But as we move forward, you will see that new items will be populated in this repository. Now, those of you who are not familiar with Git or GitHub, do not worry. Okay, just treat it as a website. Just treat it as a location where you will find the lecture notes and you will find the other things that we have done in the lecture. All right, if you're not familiar with Git or GitHub, for now, do not worry. We will explain things as we go on. Right, so when we will actually deploy our website, then we will talk about what this is, how to do version control, and all those things. Okay, perfect. So just find this link in the video description, and there you will be able to find the lecture notes. All right, now this course is about Python. So let us quickly go to python.org and quickly introduce what Python is. Right, so I hope that you are familiar with this thing. Python is a programming language, right? So, what sort of programming language Python is? Well, it is a general purpose programming language. Right? What do I mean by general purpose? It means that it is used for a lot of different things. Right? It is not the case that this programming language is used for one specific thing. For example, if you look at some older languages, for example, Fortran or perhaps COBOL, then those languages would be used only in certain contexts. For example, numerical computing, right? On the other hand, a language like Python, this is used for a variety of in a variety of different domains. Okay, Python is a very high level language, right? Now, what do we mean by very high level? Once again, so if you look back to the very old languages like assembly, languages like COBOL, they had a very simple set of instructions or a very simple set of things that the language provided to you, right? So those languages were very fast, but coding in them was very difficult, right? Or at least very tedious. Now coming to Python, Python provides you with a lot of features. Right? It provides you with a ton of features so that your life as a programmer, your life as a developer becomes as simple as possible. Right? So both reading Python, learning Python, and teaching Python, right? All of these three things is very simple. Python is a very simple programming language, but that does not mean that it is not powerful. Python is still very powerful, right? Perfect. Now, there are some other things that you might want to know about Python. Things like the fact that it is dynamically typed. Right now, it's okay if you do not know right now what dynamically typed is. As we talk about more data types and the typing system, we talk about object-oriented programming. We will explain what statically typed and dynamically typed means. Right. But for those of you who are familiar with it, just know that Python is a dynamically typed programming language. So there's a misconception in people that Python, because it is a dynamically typed language, it is also a weakly typed language, which is not correct. Now, once again, if you do not understand what weakly typed or strongly typed means, don't worry about it right now. We will explain it later on. Okay. But for those of you who know it, Python is a dynamically typed language, but it is still a strongly typed language. Okay. Cool. Now, Python is multi-paradigm. So, I mean, for those of you who are students of computer science, or for those of you who are kind of into programming, who have been reading blogs online, who have been watching videos online, you might have heard of several things, right? You might have heard of functional programming. You might have heard of procedural programming. Object-oriented programming is very common, right? Object-oriented programming. Or you might have heard of asynchronous programming, right? Event-driven programming. Or you might have heard of several other paradigms of programming. Now, Python is a multi-paradigm programming language in that it supports many different paradigms. Right? So most modern languages are actually multi-paradigm. For example, C++ is multi-paradigm, Java is multi-paradigm, but some are not. For example, Haskell is not a multi-paradigm programming language. I mean, we don't have to worry about Haskell now. Python is a multi-paradigm language. All right. Now, Python sort of has a certain charm to it, right? And the reason being that, once again, Python is very simple to learn, but apart from simplicity and power, it provides a very, very wide and very, very mature ecosystem, right? So the tooling for Python, if we come to all the tools that you will use while coding in Python, things like your development environment, right? Your editor, your version control system, all these things, they are very, very well developed. For example, the most common IDE for Python would be PyCharm, right? So other than that, across all the major editors, for example, in Sublime Text or VS Code or Vim or Emacs, you will find very, very nice Python extensions, right, that you can install to customize your editor for Python. All right. Apart from that, Python also has a lot of other tooling. For example, for code auto formatting, it has a code linting like Black. It has code auto formatting like Black. It has PyLint. It has Flake8. Right. Apart from that, it has static type checkers like MyPy. Now, once again, if this sounds all like, I mean, gibberish to you, don't worry. I'm just basically telling you, introducing some concepts of Python to you. It might not make sense right now, but just I mean, go through this. Okay. Perfect. Now, coming to what sort of applications or what sort of code do people write when they write Python code? Right? So, I mean, once again, Python is used across the board. It is used for all sorts of different things, but mostly, if you look at it, you will find Python in two things, right? You will either find people creating websites using Python, right? Writing web servers using some web framework like Django or Flask, right? Or you will use Python. You will see Python being extensively used in data analytics and machine learning, right? So that is a field that has recently caught up right now. That is recently, I mean, that's a buzzword right now, data analytics and machine learning. So Python provides a very nice set of ecosystem for that, right? Things like NumPy, TensorFlow, SciPy, Matplotlib, sklearn, and all these different things like pandas, all right? Apart from that, Python is also, you will also find Python a lot in things like DevOps, right? So a lot of scripting things and automation things and web scraping, right? Or basically validation things. So automated testing, you will find Python a lot over there. All right. Perfect. So that was a very, very brief introduction to Python. Now, what I would want for all of you to do for this course is to install Python, right? Now, installing Python will depend on what system you are. So I'm currently on Ubuntu. I'm currently on Ubuntu 20.04 LTS, but you might be on Windows. Some of you might be on Mac OS, right? And some of you might be on some other operating system. Okay. So I'm not going to explain all the particular installation steps, but for that, you can go to this particular link, right? So this is realpython.com. So the link for this will also be available in these lecture notes. So if you go to the lecture notes over here, you will find a link to this realpython.com. Right? So this is the link. And it has a very nice guide on how you can install Python on different operating systems. So So depending on what your operating system is, be it Windows, be it Mac OS, be it Linux, or some other version of Linux, be it Android, even on your iPhone, right? You can install Python. So you can go through this and install Python for your system. All right. So I would recommend that before tomorrow's class, all of you have Python installed on your system. All right. That's a humble request from my side. For today's class, since I still want you all to basically code along with me, for today's class, we will be using an online interpreter of Python. Okay. So basically, we will be using this tool called REPL. So REPL.it. Right. So once again, this is the link over here. This is the website over here. REPL.it. Okay. And if you go to this particular link, REPL.it, if you hit enter over there, this is an online REPL for Python. So you will be able to code Python in your browser itself. Okay. So what you can do over here is you can go over and click this button, start coding. When you click start coding, it will ask you what language do you want to code in. Right? So we will select Python because we are coding in Python, and we will click on create REPL. All right. So everyone, I want you to follow along with me. Open REPL.it. Okay, REPL.it. Create a new REPL over there. Choose Python as a language and create the REPL. And once you create the REPL, you will get a screen like this. Is that clear, everyone? I hope that everyone can see what is written on the screen. So I hope that the text is not too small. Yes. Is it clear to everyone? Guys, can you even see my screen? Interesting. My screen is not visible to everyone. Can you see my screen now? Yes. My screen is now visible. Okay, perfectly. So I guess some of the lecture needs to be redone. So once again, you will find the link to the lecture notes in the description. Right. So these are the lecture notes. These are the lecture notes, github.com/scalar academy/intro to Python. All right, can you see my screen, guys? Can everyone see my screen now? Yes, perfect. So you will find the lecture note over here, github.com/scalar academy introduction to Python. Right? And you will see that currently this repository is almost empty, but it has a link to lecture 1. As we move on, we will populate things over here. Okay, perfect. So if you go to this particular link, lecture 1, this link should be in the video description. You will be able to see how to download Python, right? You will be able to see instructions on how to install Python on your system. Okay, so this is the real Python link. This is the website for this real Python. So if I click on this link, it will open up this website, and it has a nice set of instructions on how you can install Python on your system. All right, so for Windows, for Mac OS, for Linux, it has all the instructions. You can even install it on your iPhone or on your Android phone. Okay, cool. Some people are saying that they still cannot see the screen. So guys, can you see the screen? I just want to confirm it. Yes, perfect. Okay. So once again, what I wanted to do before tomorrow's class is to go to this link and see how you can install Python for your operating system. Right? And before tomorrow's class, everyone should be ready with a Python installation on their system. For today, what we are going to do is we are going to go to this particular website over here. Right? So we are going to go to this particular website. The website's name is repl.it. Okay, repl.it. Right? So if we go to repl.it, we open this page, we will get a URL, something like this. So just give me a moment. Interesting. Right, we will get a URL. I'm not really sure why it is giving this URL. Just give me a second, guys. I think I'm logged in. So let me just quickly log out for you. Right. And if you go to repl.it, you should see something like this. Right. Now what we want to do is we want to click on this button this button, start coding over here. Right. And when we click on this button, it will give us a prompt. Right. It will ask us that, okay, I am going to create a new REPL. Right. And please choose the language which you want to code in. So we are going to code in Python. So let us quickly choose Python over here, and then we will click create REPL. All right. So I want each and every one of you to do this right now. Go to your open up your browser. In the browser, type this URL, repl.it, right? Click on create REPL, choose the language as Python, and finally click create REPL. And once you do that, you will get a screen that looks something like this. Okay? Perfect. Now let me quickly introduce several parts on the screen. There's a lot going on over here. Don't worry about all these things. Today we will be working mostly on this right hand side, on this black side. Okay? So over here, this is called the REPL. This black portion over here, this is called the REPL, R-E-P-L. REPL simply stands for read, execute, print, loop, right? So this basically means this is an application that will read your code. So whatever you type in, it will read your code, it will execute it, it will print the results, and then it will wait for your code again. Right? So we will see what this is, but for now, this is the REPL. On the left hand side, you can see some sort of a text editor. Right? So you can see the text editor and you can see the files that are available on this system. All right, so we won't be using this left hand side for now. We will be using this right hand side at the moment. All right, and let me quickly zoom in once again. So I just want to make sure that this text is visible. Is this text visible, guys? Yes, perfect. All right. Please maximize the command window. So I'm not maximizing it. I'm just going to resize it a little bit so that it is much more clear. All right. Cool. All right. Is this better? Perfect. Okay. So let us start with the very, very basics of Python. Okay. So some people still cannot see it. Can you guys see it now? Can you guys see it now? Yes. Okay. So we are going to start with the basics of Python. So first of all, what we can do is we can treat Python as a calculator, right? You all have a pocket calculator. You can treat Python sort of as a calculator. So what we can do over here is we can come and type very simple things like 1 plus 1, right? And when we hit enter, we will get the result 2. Right? Now Python is much more than a calculator, but we will start very simply. All right. If you enter 1 plus 1, you will get 2. So what other operations does Python support? All sorts of mathematical operations, right? The basic mathematical operations. For example, multiplication. So what is 10 times 20? Well, that is 200, right? So that's multiplication side. Right? You can do subtraction. So 20 minus 14, that is 6, right? You can do division. The division is a slightly different in Python, right? So if you do 30 by 20, you get 1.5. And in fact, 30 by 20 is 1.5. Right? Now, if you are coming from other languages like C++ or languages like Java, then you would have expected this to give you back 1. Right? So you would have expected that this will be integer division. For those of you who don't know about integer division, do not worry about it. Right? Do not worry about it right now. But by default in Python, this slash sign is the one what gives you floating point division. Right? If you want integer division in Python, if you want to get an integer result back, then what you have to do is you have to do this double slash. Okay, this double slash is the integer division in Python, and this will give you back 1. Right? Perfect. Cool. Now, this integer division fact, this is for Python 3.8, right? This is for Python 3. So on top, if you see over here, you can see the version of the Python that has been loaded. So it says over here, I'm using Python 3.8.2. All right. Now, if you are familiar with Python, or if you have seen Python earlier, or if you try to run Python on your system, you might be getting Python 2. You might by default have Python 2 installed. Right? Python 2 is obsolete. Please do not use it. Python 2 has been dead for quite some time. Right? Please make sure that whenever you install Python or whenever you use Python, you stick to Python 3 only. In Python 3, you can choose any version. You can choose 3.5, 3.6, 3.7, and so on. But it is always better to stay with the latest version. All right. So whenever you install Python, just make sure that you install Python 3.8. All right. Perfect. So I hope these basic mathematical operations are clear to us. Addition, multiplication, subtraction, normal division, and integer division. Right. This is the normal division. It will give you fractional values, and this is the integer division. Apart from that, we also have another operator for the power, right? So if you might know, what is 2 to the power of 5? So 2 to the power of 5 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. 2 multiplied 5 times, which is 32. So we have this operator double asterisk. Right? This operator calculates the power. All right, and this does not just work for integers. So you can calculate the square root of 2 as well. So you can do 2 to the power 1 by 2. Right? So 2 raised to the power half will be the square root of 2, and you can calculate the square root of 2 in this manner. All right, perfect. So what if I do something like this? What if I do something like this? Minus 1 to the power 1 by 2. What is this supposed to be? So this is the square root of minus 1, right? Does the square root of minus 1 exist? Does the square root of minus 1 exist? Well, depends on how much you know about mathematics, right? So in real numbers, the square root of the square root of minus 1 does not exist. But we can extend the real numbers into complex numbers. Right? And in complex numbers, we can define something called the imaginary number iota. Right? And iota is defined as the square root of minus 1. Well, Python, unlike most languages, Python by default supports these complex numbers. So if I hit enter over here, you will see that I'm getting some value. I'm getting some really, really weird value. First of all, this weird value, it is not a number. It is not a normal number. It is a complex number. So it has two parts to it. It has a bracket. In the bracket, it has one part. It has some part over here. This is the real part. Then it has a plus sign. And then it has an imaginary part, 1j. Right? Now in mathematics, you would usually write I. Right? You would usually write I. However, I in programming languages is very frequently used as a variable name, right? As a loop variable. So Python has chosen to use the J notation, right? To use the J notation for this imaginary number. All right. So, I mean, why is this result? This is basically saying that this is 0 plus 1j. Right? This is 0 plus 1j. Now, while calculating this, it made a very slight error. It did not give you back 0. It gave you 0 point followed by 17 zeros and then a 6.12. Right? So do not really worry about this result. This is some nuance of floating point calculations. Right? So once you study how the floating point numbers are stored in memory of computers, you will get to know that yes, errors like this are very common when you are working with any particular computer, all right, of any particular programming language. This is not specific to Python. Okay, perfect. All right, cool. So far we have covered addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, integer division, and power. And we saw that there are complex numbers as well. Okay. Now, as you had studied way back in class 3rd or class 2nd, there is something called baud mass. Right? So if you want to group operations together, you can use a bracket to group operations together. In programming languages, you will always use these brackets. Right? So in mathematics, you can use these brackets or you can use these brackets as well to club operations together, to club expressions together. In programming languages, we always use the parentheses, the round brackets. Okay, so if I want to say that 2 plus 3 times 4, right, then the result I should get back is 14 because 3 times 4 will be executed first, right? Asterisk multiplication has a higher precedence than addition. Right? So 3 times 4 will be executed first, so this will be 12 and you will get 14 back. If you want to do 2 plus 3 first, then you will have to put this inside bracket, inside these parentheses. Right? So just like in normal mathematics we do, so that we can get 5 times 4, which is 20 back. All right, perfect. So I hope that everyone is clear that you can use Python as a very, very simple calculator. Now let us move on to more programming things. All right, perfect. Let us move on to more programming things. Okay, so just before we move on to programming, I just want to point out one more thing. So Sukanya has asked a very nice question over here. Sukanya asks, what is the maximum range of integer in Python? Right. So now if you are coming from languages like C++ or Java, then you are familiar with the limits that integers have. Right. So for example, a 32-bit integer cannot store every possible number. Right. It can store numbers only up till a certain value. Right. So there's an upper limit to how much data you can store in a 32-bit integer. Right? Similarly, there are 64-bit integers and so on. Right? In Python, these integers are not really limited. Right? In Python, all the integers are big integers. Right? So basically, what you can do over here is you can come here and you can calculate 2 to the power 1000. Now 2 to the power 1000 is a pretty large number. Right? 2 to the power 1000 is a pretty large number. If you try to calculate this in C++ or Java, then it will overflow the integer. But in Python, because the integers are not limited by a particular bit size, they're just limited by how much RAM you have. Right? So you will easily get the result back. And it will be a huge, massive number. Right? This huge, massive number over here. Okay? Perfect. Cool. Now, one tip, if you are in this REPL and you want to clear the screen, right? Currently you see some output, right? If you want to clear the screen, if you want to get rid of the output, what you have to press is Control and L. So Control plus L, that is what you have to press. Now, if you're on Mac OS, you might call that Command plus L. Okay, if you're on Mac OS, you will call it Command plus L. But on other systems, Windows and Linux, you will press Control plus L. So I'm just going to press Control and L, and you see that whatever was there on the screen, it has vanished. All right, perfect. Harsh is asking, so is the maximum 2 to the power 32? No, Harsh, the maximum is not 2 to the power 32. In some other programming languages that have 32-bit integers, if you have a 32-bit integer, the maximum number you can store is 2 to the power 32. But Python can very simply store 2 to the power 33 and any larger number as well. Okay, perfect. Okay, so moving on, let us move on to some more programming related things. So let us quickly introduce variables, right? Suppose that you wanted to calculate the area of a rectangle, right? So what does a rectangle have? A rectangle has some width, it has some height, right? So you all know about rectangles, they have some width and they have some height. And how do you calculate the area of a rectangle? The area is width times height, right? So what you can come over here and do, and you can declare a variable. So a variable like width. You can type width and you can put the equals to sign 2, right? Width equals to 2. Now this is not the mathematical notation. If you are familiar with college level algebra or class 10th level algebra, then you might assume that we have written an equation here. We have written that the width is always equal to 2. That is not what we are saying over here. What we are saying over here in programming, this equality is saying this is an assignment operator. What we are telling it is take this value 2 and put it in this variable width, right? Or basically this value 2 can also be called by the name width. Okay, that is what we are saying. Similarly, we can come over here and say height equals to, let's say, 40, right? So we can say width equals to 2, height equals to 40. Now, if you want to calculate the area, we can come over here and say, okay, take the value which is in width, take whatever value is in width, and take whatever value is in height. And when you press enter, you will not really get anything. If you want to print out the value of area, you can type out area over here and it will show you that yes, area is 80. Okay. Yes. Right. So there's one thing that I want to introduce to you. So back when we were doing simple calculations like 1 plus 1, the result was printed out. Right. But when we did this area equals to width into height, the result was not printed out. Right? So this is specific to the REPL. This is specific to the environment we are currently working in. Right? So in this environment, if there is a result and you assign it to a variable, right? If you calculate 1 plus 1 and then you assign it to a variable, then it won't be printed out. Right? Then you will have to manually print it by telling X, right? By saying X or by saying the name of the variable. Right? On the other hand, if you do not assign it, then it will directly be printed out. All right. Perfect. So I hope this variable example is clear. Width equals to 2, height equals to 40, area equals to width times height. Yes. Perfect. Now there is one more variable over here in the REPL when you are working. Suppose you wanted to get back the last thing that you have calculated. Right? Suppose that you wanted to get the last thing that you have calculated. So I calculated 2 plus 32. Right? And the result was 34, but I did not really save it anywhere. I did not really save it anywhere in any variable. Well, the Python REPL will automatically save it in a variable called underscore. Okay, so you do see the symbol underscore over here. So underscore, if you put underscore over there and press enter, you will see 34 printed out. So whatever was the last result that you calculated, Python will save it in this variable called underscore. All right. Perfect. All right. Cool. So I hope this is clear. Let me quickly clear the screen. So I'll press Control L to clear the screen. and everything is gone. Okay. Now let us move on to something more advanced. So basically, let's talk about strings now. So whenever we are doing programming, the first program that everyone writes is called a hello world program. It's called a hello world program. So in Python, the hello world program goes something like this. You type print, then you type a open parenthesis, and open quotation mark, hello world, right? Then a close quotation mark, then the close parenthesis, right? There are no semicolons in Python, right? I mean, you can put a semicolon, but it will be ignored. Okay, you don't really need to put semicolons in Python. So when you press enter over there, you will see hello world printed out to your screen. All right, you will see hello world printed out to your screen. So let us basically talk about what this is. Let us talk about what we wrote over here. So print is a function, right? Print is a function, right? We will come to what functions are and how to define functions, how to define our own functions. We will come to that, right? This thing over here, including this quotes, right? So this quote, hello, just give me a second, guys. Right. Quote, hello world, right? This thing over here, including the quotes, this is known as a string. So you might be coming from other programming languages, so you might already be aware of strings. A string is nothing but just a sequence of characters, right? A sequence of letters. This is string. Okay. So basically, a string is another data type in Python. Just like 1 plus 1 gives you back a result. That result will be an integer. Right? Similarly, if you do 1 plus 2.5, that will give you back a result. The result will be a floating point number. Similarly, this hello world in these quotes, this is a string. And you can assign it to variables as well. So you can say my string equals to hello world. Right? Hello world. You can come over here and say that. And now if you want to print the value of my string, you can do print my string, right? And it will print hello world. Is that clear? Yes. Okay, so some of you are worried about what just happened. A black screen came up, right? This black screen came up and I entered a command and exited. Don't worry about that. That is just something I will need to do from some time to sometime in the background. Okay, don't worry about that. All right, cool. So you can have strings and you can store the strings in variables as well. Now, one thing that you will notice is I use this underscore thing over here. Right? I use this weird symbol underscore in the variable name. So this is known as the camel case. Camel case. Right? Different programming languages have different styles. They have different styles of coding. They have different patterns and they have different. They have different styles of coding basically. So in something like Java, you will use a variable name that looks something like my string, right? But in Python, we prefer using underscore. So we will write my string. Okay, so this is very, very important. If you write a Python program in camel case, people are going to be very upset, right? So please make sure that you always write snake case. So this is the snake case. It has snakes in between, underscores in between. Okay, perfect. Moving on. So now that we are talking about strings, let us talk about what these strings are. Right? So if you want to talk about a string, if you want to declare a string, if you want to write a string, you always have to include it. You always have to enclose it. You always have to enclose it in these quotes. So on the left hand side there must be a quote, and on the right hand side there must be a quote. Okay. So this is how you put a string. So basically, if you do not put a quote on the right hand side, then it will give you an error. If I do not put a quote on the right hand side, it will give me an error. It will give me a syntax error saying that, okay, I was trying to find a quote over here, but I did not find any quote. And I encountered the end of line. Okay, cool. Now, this is one way you can talk about strings in Python, but there are many, many other ways, right? There are many, many other ways. For example, in Python, you can also use the double quotes, right? So there are two symbols. There's the quotation mark and there's a double quotation mark. You can also use the double quotation mark in Python. Well, this is perfectly fine. Now, notice that even though I entered double quotation, right? In the output, it gave me back single quotations. Right? In the output, it gave me back single quotations. These are exactly the same. Right? A string with a double quotation and a string with a single quotation, they're exactly the same. It is just that you can use whatever you want. If you want to use single quotation, you can use it. If you want to use double quotation, you can also use it. Idiomatically, right? Most Python people prefer using the single quotation mark. Okay. Perfect. So let me clear the screen once again. Control L, clear screen. Okay. So suppose that I wanted to say hello. So suppose that we have Lakshay in the chart over here. I wanted to write a string like Lakshay said hello, right? Hello, right? So I wanted to say something like this. So notice that in this string, I want these quotations. I want these quotations to be a part of my string, right? In Python, I can do this very simply. I can start my quotation. I can start my string by this quotation. I can say Lakshay said hello, and I can end it like this, right? So I will get Lakshay said hello, and it will have these quotations. If I print this variable, it will give me Lakshay said hello. Right? This will be printed out. Right? Is that clear? Now this is possible. This is possible because our strings are currently delimited by single quotations. Right? Had you started your string by double quotation, Lakshay said hello, right? And if you try to do something like this, then you will get an error. Why will you get an error? Because what Python thinks is that, okay, your string started over here and it ended over here. It ended over here. Then there was some weird thing. I don't really know what this is. But then another string started over here and ended over here. Right? So Python is confused what really happened. All right. So whenever you encounter situations like this, for example, if you have this single quoted string, if you have something over here, right? Something over here, and if you want to include some quotation, right? Single quotation over here, then how will you do that? Right? How will you do that? You will escape it. So you'll have to escape these characters. These are special characters that you have to escape. How do you escape a character? You put a backslash in front of it. Right? Notice that this is not a forward slash. This is not the division symbol. Division symbol is called a forward slash. This is the reverse division symbol. This is the backslash. So if you escape it like this, now this thing works. Okay, now this thing works. All right. So once again, this string that we had over here, which Python was earlier confused by, right? Python was earlier confused by this particular string. Just give me a second. So my bad. So Python was earlier confused about this string. Lakshay said, right? Hello. Okay. So if I want to fix this, I just have to escape this quotation and this quotation, right? And now Python will be happy. Is that clear? Perfect. Now, this is not the only type of string that Python supports. Python supports a lot of varieties of strings. So Python supports something called f strings. Python supports something called byte strings, right? Python has, raw strings, right? And many other things. Okay. So Python has a lot of variety of strings. As we move on throughout the course, we will be discussing these variants, right? So in fact, we will be seeing f strings today as well. All right. But I hope that most of the things about strings are clear. Okay. Now there's one more thing that I want to introduce, which is the comments. So in most programming languages, when you're writing your code, right, you might want to describe that code. You might want to talk about that code or basically explain that code, right? And whatever you write, you want it to remain with your code. You don't want to put it somewhere else, right? And so the issue is that you don't want those comments. You don't want those explanations to be executed by the computer. Right? Those are just some comments that you have placed for your understanding. So every language supports some sort of a comment syntax. Right? So in Python, the comments are done by using this pound symbol, this hash symbol. Right? So if I do something here, right, I can write anything here, and Python will ignore it. Okay, so it will not execute this line. Any line that has this hash, it will not execute this line. And I can go a little further. So I can say 1 + 1, right? And then I can put a hash, and then I put something here. Right? So in this line, this part will be executed. Right? But everything that is after this hash, will be ignored. Okay, so if I do this, I will get back 2. This something here will be completely ignored. All right? Perfect. So these are comments in Python. Now, most languages have a multi-line comment as well. Python doesn't really have a multi-line comment syntax. Right? Python doesn't really have a syntax for multi-line comments. All the comments in Python are single line. So if you do something here, right? Something here, right? It is not the case that you can add a new line over here. Right? It is not the case that you add a new line over here. If you want to add a new line, you will have to type another hash symbol. If you want to move the comment to the next line, you will have to put another hash symbol. Otherwise, it won't be considered a comment. All right. There is a different thing that we use in Python to represent multi-line comments, and that is the triple quoted strings. The triple quoted strings, let us not worry about them right now. Okay, as we move on, we will discuss more on that. All right, perfect, perfect. So I hope this is clear. The strings part is clear and the comments part is clear. Now let us move on to very, very simple input and output in Python. Right. So before we move on to input and output in Python, let me quickly show you, if you want to read something, if you want to read a particular value in Java, what you have to write. Right. So I'm just going to compare the languages over here. So in Java, you would do something like this: import java.io.star. Right. Then you will do public class main class. Right. You will do public static void main string args. Right, you will do throws IO exception, right? And in there you will do something like buffered reader br equals to new buffered reader new input stream reader uh, uh, reader system.in. Right? And then when you finally want to use something, if you want to read something, you will say string uh, input, string my input equals to br.readline. Right? This is what you will have to write in a language like Java to read a simple value, a simple string from the user. Now this is horrific. Right? This is horrific. In Python, you don't have to do any of these. In Python, you don't have to do anything that complicated. Python is very simple. It is very elegant. Basically, what you can do is you can simply do input, give me a string. Right? You can do as something as simple as this. Right? You don't really have to put this as well. So you can remove this. You can remove this as well. So if I just write input with these two brackets and I hit enter, it will wait. Right? It did not give me anything back. The reason it did not give me anything back is because it is waiting for an input. Okay, it is waiting for an input. So I can give some input over here, some input over here. And when I press enter, this input will be returned to me. Right? This function will give me back whatever I have inputted. Sorry. I can also store this in a variable. So I can say x equals to input. If I do x equals to input, it is once again waiting for input, and I will have some value over here. Right? And when I press enter, this value has been assigned to x. So if I do x over here, then you will see that okay, this x has this value. Right? Perfect. Now, when you are, so it doesn't really look nice, right? When I did some input over here, it doesn't really look nice that the person does not really know what to do. It tells me nothing. It just waits around. Not the best thing. Right? So what I can do over here is I can come and say input, and I can give it a prompt. Right? I can give it a prompt like give me a string. Okay. So now when I press enter, this prompt will be displayed. This prompt will be displayed so that the user knows that okay, I have to enter something. So something is entered. Right? Now once again you will see that all right, this does not look pretty. Right? This does not look pretty. So usually in your prompt you would want to include a space at the end. Right? You would create something like this. You would write something like this. So you will in this string itself you will include a colon and a space so that you get this pretty output over here. Right? So that if you type something, then it is clear that okay, this was the prompt and this was the input. All right. So this is the basic way we do inputs in Python. Cool. Now, suppose you want to read an integer, right? Suppose you want to read two values. Suppose you want to read two numbers and you want to add them up. Okay. So let me just clear the screen. So what will you do? If you do A equals to input, right? So let me enter 10. And if you do B equals to input, let me enter 50, right? And if you try to add them up, A plus B, right? If you try to add them up, you get this weird result 1050. 10 plus 50 is not 1050, right? 10 plus 50 is 60. Right? So what happened over here was whenever you do an input, the value is returned as a string. Right? So don't worry about what I'm typing right now. But if I ask for the type of it, right, then it will say that okay, it is a string. Okay. What I am trying to get as input is a number. What I am trying to get as input is a number. So for example, a thing like type of 10. This will be an integer. So I'm trying to get an integer. So what you will have to do is you will have to convert this number into an integer, convert this string into an integer. The way you can do that is simply put the int function around it. Right? So if you have int 10, right, if I have int 10, it will give me back the number 10. I give it a string with 10 and it will give me back a number with 10. So I can come over here and say a equals to int input, right? And now it will wait for an input. It will take that input, it will convert it into an integer, and then it will save it in the variable a. Is that clear? So if I press enter, now I can enter a value 1024, and now a has an integer. If I ask for the type of a now, it will be an integer. All right? Perfect. So what we are going to do is we are going to say a equals to int input, right? And so we have some value over here. B equals to int input. We have another value over here, and now we can do a plus b, and it will give us back the result 30. All right, very basic stuff. Okay, moving on. So now basically what I want to introduce is, so this still feels a little weird, right? This still feels a little weird that when we ask for input, we have to give the input immediately. So now let us move on from the REPL. So this black portion is called the REPL. Right? Let us move from this to a file. On the left, you see main.py. This is a file. This file is stored over here. Okay, this file is stored over here in this directory, files. All right. So let us try to write our programs over here in the left part. Okay. So I can write the same program in the left part. I can say a equals to int input, right? And over here you will see something popping up. So this is called IntelliSense. This is called autocomplete. Right, so your editor, if your editor is good, it will try to tell you, it will try to give you some documentation, it will try to help you in writing the code. Okay, so it will tell you that this int function, this converts a number or string to an integer. Right, similarly, if you go to this input function over here, right, if you go to this input function, it tells you that this reads a string from the standard input. All right, so I can come over here and I can say a equals to int input, and I can say b equals to int input. And then I can say print, I can actually say a plus b, right? Now let me try to run this. So to run this, I will hit this big green button over here. Right? I will hit this big green button. Now, when you have Python installed on your system, finally, this is not, I mean, there will be no big green red button over there. Right? So we will see how to run the Python from our terminal, from our command line, when all of you have installed Python. Right, so in the next class, we'll see how to actually run Python from the command line. But for now, to run this program that we have written in this file, all we need to do is hit this button. And as soon as we hit this button, you will see that nothing is really happening. That is because it is waiting for input. Right? It is waiting for input. So I can give it a number like 5, I can give it a number like 6, and it ends. It doesn't really give me anything. It doesn't really give me anything. The reason it doesn't give me anything is because I have not printed out these results. Right? I have not printed out this result. So when we were in the REPL space, if I did 1 plus 1, the REPL automatically printed out the value. Right? The REPL automatically printed out the value because the REPL is sort of interactive. Right? This will not happen in Fusion. When you're writing actual code, if you want to print, you have to specifically tell the computer to print. So if I come over here and I say print, right now if I execute this program, the program will print. But before that, let me make one more fix. So let me come over here and give a prompt over here. Right? So I can say enter first number, right? And I can come over here and say enter second number, right? And now when I execute this program, you will see that, okay, now I get a pretty prompt over here. Now I get a nice prompt over here. Enter first number. My first number is suppose 12. Enter second number. It is suppose 54, right? And then it will give me the addition back. 12 plus 54 equals to 66. Is that clear? Yes, this is how we do input and output in Python. Simply the input function, if you want to convert it into an integer, you pass it into the int function, right? And to print something, you simply print the value. Okay, very simple. Perfect. So this is basically what I want to leave you with today. I mean, today we just covered the very basics of Python. Going forward, we will step up our pace. So towards the end of this particular video series, what we wanted to do is we wanted to create a complete web application in Django and deploy it. Right? So you will have your own website up and running. Okay. So to do that, we will have to pace things up a little. Do not worry though. If you have any question whatsoever, right, feel free to post it in the chat. Okay. During the class, if you feel that I'm going too fast or if you feel that something is not clear, feel free to ask a question in the chat. Questions are always welcome. All right. Now, once again, before tomorrow's class, What all of you have to do is you have to go to this particular link, Real Python, Python 3 installation and setup guide, right? So the URL for that is realpython.com installing Python, right? Realpython.com installing Python. This is the particular link. Okay, so just go over there and see how you can install Python on your operating system. All right. So once you're done with that, we will resume the class tomorrow. There's one more thing. So if you look in the video description of this particular video, you will see several links. Right? So first link will be to this particular, one of the links will be to this particular repository. Right? One of the links will be to this particular GitHub repository. It will start with github.com. Okay. There will be another link. That link will take you to a discussion forum. That link will take you to Scalar chat. Right? So that link will take you to an interface, chat.scalar.com. So that is a community where you can come and interact with other students, right? So whoever is watching this YouTube series, those people can come over there. They can chat live with each other. Other students who are at Scalar Academy, right? So at our tech university, those students will be there, so you can chat with them as well. The TAs, the mentors, the instructors, right? Me included. So we will all be present in the chat. So if you have any questions, any further questions, anything that you would like to ask, anything that you would like to clarify, anything that you need help with, just post it over there and we will be able to reply to you. All right. So links in the video description, and see you tomorrow, same time. Okay. 6:30 to 7:30 is the class. Tomorrow we are going to pace it up a little bit. Please make sure that you have Python installed. All right. Let us quickly see if we have any questions. Khushbu is saying that I can't really see the GitHub link. Well, Khushbu, let me just make sure that the GitHub link is in the description. If it is not in the description right now, please don't worry. I mean, as soon as this lecture is over, I will make sure that I add the link. Okay. So if the link is not there at the moment, do not worry. We'll make sure that we add the link. Perfect. So let us end the class and see you tomorrow, same time. All right. Bye-bye.